Have you ever gone to the movie theater and returned stunned by the graphics that are so breathtaking but still realistically possible? That's visual effects. While there are countless stories of innovation and creating new technology to please your action-thirsty eyes, I want to tell you about one in particular, the story of Industrial Light and Magic. Industrial Light and Magic, also known as ILM, is a company that makes visual effects sequences. Today, ILM is still the leading company in the visual effects industry, but let's talk about how their operation revolutionized visual effects in the movie industry. It's 1975, and a man by the name of George Lucas is trying to pull a team together to make his far-fetched movie, Star Wars, a reality. He knew that the effects on his movie would be key to sell it and make the audience's jaw drop. However, at the time, visual effects were mainly stop-motion graphics. This didn't satisfy George, so he founded Industrial Light and Magic to make the wizardry for his Star Wars film. Up until Star Wars released in 1977, the best visual effects were from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Even then, the best shots were of moon landers descending upon its surface, and that was about it. While Space Odyssey wowed the audience, producers and production companies had no hope in sci-fi because they knew there was low demand for those stories. The team consisted of John Dykstra, Dennis Muren, and others who came together to form ILM. The team at ILM put their heads together and started to plan their attack on making the visual wizardry seen in George Lucas's mind. In 1976, in Van Nuys, California, they created a camera rig called the Dykstra. This machine used the earliest of computer machinery to program a camera to move in complex patterns to simulate spacecraft flying through space. They chose this approach because it was easier to make the camera move in a calculated manner than multiple ships and models being flung around the set. Speaking of multiple ships and models, because they could replicate the motions of the camera as many times as they wanted, they didn't need to squeeze multiple props into the frame at once. The Dykstra used a main computer to control the different parts of the rig to move in any motion programmed. It could achieve this due to the various parts that control yaw, pitch, roll, as well as up and down and forward-backward motions. These axes are also known as the 6 degrees of freedom. The motion is inputted through dials on the remote, which are saved into the computer to repeat multiple times. The visual effects team will then overlay multiple recordings with different ships to make for an astounding chase scene. This creation started a frontier in history for the visual effects industry because it marked a change in the limits of visual effects and showed the world what is capable by doing a project on a level never seen before. It sparked the needed inspiration to push the limits of effects, and without this kickstart, there would not be any 3D animation or digital editing today. The movie immediately picked up steam and featured in all big theaters around the world. The audience that viewed the movie found it extremely impressive, so much so that they waited in long lines up to 5 hours to watch the movie for a second or third time. People gained a new interest in science fiction movies and the realm of Star Wars because of the effects that were thought to be impossible but succeeded with perfect execution. Lucasfilm added a second and third Star Wars movie to the franchise, creating the well-known Star Wars trilogy, and made the first digital editing system, EditDroid, to replace the painful hours of cutting and rearranging tapes. Later, the Star Wars franchise made 2 additional trilogies of feature films and many other shows and movies to accompany the ever more complex storyline. The visual effects of this film create a hunger for innovation to improve the technology made for visual effects in a similar way to how the Dykstra created possibilities in Star Wars. ILM made the first film that used 3D CGI, computer-generated imagery, to make dinosaurs come to life in Jurassic World. Along with realistic graphics, they created the start of Pixar Animation Studio, popular for their creative kids movies like Toy Story, Cars, and Incredibles. To top it all off, Photoshop is a direct result of the ILM's work. The technology created for Star Wars gave inspiration, possibility, and standards for the VFX used in action and sci-fi movies. It created the spark to improve visual effects and CGI. In fact, if it weren't for George Lucas, founder and filmmaker, then digital editing software would not exist. Now ILM has done the visual effects for over 350 feature films. Almost every feature action movie you've watched since the late 1900s was likely done by these pros. Their work back then was undoubtedly the reason for great action and sci-fi movies today.